In the dusty haze of a fading sunset over the vast plains of Wyoming, where the wind whispered secrets through the sagebrush and the distant mountains stood like silent guardians, a lone cowboy named Jack Harlan rode into the small town of Eldridge. The year was 1887, a time when the West was still wild, railroads snaked through untamed lands, and men like Jack forged their destinies with grit and gunpowder. Jack was no stranger to hardship. His life had been a relentless forge, hammering away at the softer parts of his soul until only iron remained. He had learned early that vulnerability was a luxury for fools, and he had systematically dismantled every trace of weakness within himself: fear, doubt, hesitation, leaving behind a man unbreakable by the world's cruelties. Jack's horse, a sturdy bay named Thunder, clopped wearily along the dirt road leading to the train depot. The depot was a weathered wooden structure, its platform creaking under the weight of forgotten dreams and hurried departures. Jack dismounted, tying Thunder to a post, his spurs jingling softly in the evening air. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face etched by sun and sorrow, his eyes a piercing blue that missed nothing. His coat, a worn leather duster stained with the dust of 100 trails, hung heavy on his frame. He had come to Eldridge not by choice but by necessity. Rumors of cattle rustlers had drawn him here, offering a bounty that could buy him a fresh start, perhaps a small ranch where he could finally lay down roots. As he approached the bench on the depot platform, something caught his eye: a figure huddled there, motionless under the dim glow of a lantern. It was a woman, asleep or perhaps exhausted beyond measure, her form curled against the chill of the encroaching night. Her dress was tattered, a faded blue calico that spoke of better days long gone, and her hair, dark and unbound, spilled over her shoulders like a raven's wing. She shivered slightly in her sleep, the thin shawl around her doing little to ward off the cold. Jack paused, his hardened heart stirring in a way he hadn't felt in years. Who was she? A runaway? A widow? The West was full of lost souls, but something about her vulnerability pierced through his armor. Without a word, he shrugged off his coat and draped it gently over her, the warmth of his body still lingering in the fabric. She stirred but didn't wake, murmuring something incoherent as she nestled deeper into the unexpected comfort. Jack stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, a strange tenderness blooming in his chest. He had offered his protection before, to friends, to strangers in saloons, but this felt different. It was as if in that simple act, he was offering more than fabric. He was offering a piece of his guarded heart. The train whistle pierced the night, jolting her awake. Her eyes, wide and green like prairie grass after rain, met his. Who? She began, clutching the coat. Name's Jack, he said gruffly, tipping his hat. Looked like you needed it more than me. She sat up, pulling the coat tighter. I'm Eliza. Eliza Thorne. I must have dozed off waiting for the train. Thank you. Her voice was soft, laced with an Eastern accent that hinted at cities and civility far from this rugged frontier. Jack nodded, not pressing for more. In the West, stories were shared sparingly, like water in a drought. But, as the train rumbled in, delayed by some mechanical woe, they found themselves talking under the stars. Eliza confessed she was fleeing a broken engagement in Boston, seeking a new life out west with nothing but a small valise and dwindling hope. Jack, in turn, shared fragments of his past: the orphan boy who had clawed his way from poverty, the gunfighter who had buried friends and foes alike, the man who had learned that to survive, one must destroy the weak self within, lest others do it for you. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others, he said quietly, staring into the distance. It was a mantra he had forged in the fires of loss, after watching his mentor gunned down in a senseless duel, after betrayal by those he trusted. Eliza listened, her eyes reflecting the lantern's flicker, and, in that moment, an unspoken bond formed. As the night deepened, Jack offered to escort her to the boarding house in town, his heart already entangled in ways he couldn't yet fathom. Little did he know, this encounter would test the very strength he had built, forcing him to confront whether true invincibility came from isolation or from the courage to love. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of unexpected companionship. Eldridge was a speck on the map, with its single saloon, a general store, and a sheriff's office that doubled as a jail. Jack had intended to stay only long enough to track the rustlers, but Eliza's presence anchored him. She took a job at the boarding house, mending clothes and serving meals, her gentle demeanor winning over the rough townsfolk. Jack, meanwhile, rode out at dawn, scouting the canyons where the outlaws were said to hide, his rifle at the ready. Yet each evening, he returned to find her waiting on the porch, a cup of coffee in hand. Their conversations deepened. She spoke of books she'd read, of dreams of a family and a home, while he shared tales of the trail, the thrill of a stampede, the silence of a starry night. But, beneath it all ran the undercurrent of his philosophy. "I've seen men crumble because they clung to their fears," he told her one night as they walked along the riverbank. "I rid myself of mine years ago. Doubt? Gone. Mercy for the undeserving? Buried. It's the only way to stand tall when the world tries to break you." Eliza challenged him gently. "But, what about kindness, Jack? Isn't that a strength, not a weakness?" He paused, the river's murmur filling the silence. "Kindness can be a chain if it's not tempered. I've offered my heart before, and it nearly cost me everything." She touched his arm, her fingers light but insistent. "Perhaps offering it again is how you prove you're truly unbreakable." Their bond grew, tentative at first, like a seedling in rocky soil. Jack found himself softening around her, laughing at her stories, protecting her from the leering eyes of drifters in the saloon. One afternoon, as storm clouds gathered, he taught her to ride thunder, his hands steady on hers as she gripped the reins. "Feel the power beneath you," he said. "Control it, don't fear it." She smiled, her face flushed with exhilaration. "Like destroying your weak self?" "Exactly." But the rustlers were no myth. Whispers in town spoke of raids on nearby ranches, cattle vanishing into the night. Jack joined a posse led by Sheriff Harlan, no relation, though the name amused him. They rode hard, tracking hoofprints through the Badlands, and, in a narrow canyon, they ambushed the gang. Gunfire echoed like thunder, bullets whizzing past as Jack took down two outlaws with precise shots. In the chaos, he was grazed by a stray round, blood soaking his shirt, but he pressed on, his resolve unyielding. The weak self he had destroyed left no room for panic. He fought like a force of nature. Returning to Eldridge victorious, bounty in hand, he found Eliza waiting anxiously. She bandaged his wound, her hands trembling. "You could have died," she whispered. "But I didn't," he replied, pulling her close. In that embrace, he offered his heart fully, whispering promises of a future together, a ranch, children, a life built on shared strength. Yet shadows loomed. Word arrived that Eliza's former fiancé, a wealthy banker named Victor Lang, had tracked her west, intent on reclaiming what he saw as his. Victor was a man of means, not might, but his influence could sway sheriffs and judges. Jack felt the stirrings of old fears, but he crushed them ruthlessly. "He won't take you," he vowed to Eliza. "Not while I breathe." The confrontation came swiftly. Victor arrived on the next train, flanked by hired guns, demanding Eliza return with him. In the saloon, tensions boiled over. "She's mine," Victor snarled, his voice oily with entitlement. Jack stood firm, his hand hovering near his holster. "She's her own. And, if you try to force her, you'll answer to me." The shootout was brutal and brief. Victor's men drew first, but Jack's speed, honed by years of self-forged discipline, dispatched them. Victor himself fled, wounded and humiliated, vowing revenge. In the aftermath, as Eliza clung to him, Jack realized his mantra held true not just in battle, but in love. By destroying his weak self, he had become a shield for her, unbreakable against external threats. Their life together began in earnest. They married in a simple ceremony at the depot where they met, the bench a silent witness. Jack used his bounty to buy land, and they built a cabin overlooking the plains. Eliza planted a garden, her hands turning soil into life, while Jack tended cattle, his days filled with purpose. But the West was unforgiving, droughts came, rustlers returned, and illness struck the town. Through it all, Jack's inner strength sustained them. When a fever took hold of Eliza, he rode through a blizzard to fetch a doctor, his will defying the storm. Recovering, she teased him. "Your heart's not so guarded anymore." He smiled. "Maybe not. But it's stronger for it." Years passed, their family growing with 2 children, a boy with Jack's blue eyes and a girl with Eliza's spirit. Jack taught them his lesson: destroy the weak self, build the unbreakable core. Yet Eliza tempered it with love, showing that true strength included vulnerability shared with those who mattered. In the quiet evenings, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Jack reflected on that fateful night at the depot. By covering her with his coat and offering his heart, he had not weakened himself but fortified his soul. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others, and, in loving Eliza, he had proven it eternally. The story of Jack and Eliza deepened as the turn of the century approached, the West evolving with the clatter of progress. Railroads expanded, bringing settlers and speculators, transforming Eldridge from a sleepy outpost into a bustling hub. Jack's ranch prospered, his herds multiplying under his vigilant eye, but the lessons of his youth remained etched in his being. He had destroyed his weak self not through isolation, but through relentless self-mastery, turning pain into power, loss into resolve. Eliza, now his wife of 5 years, had blossomed in this life. Gone was the frightened woman from the depot bench, in her place stood a partner equal in fortitude. She managed the household with efficiency, bartering at the general store, tending to the children, and even learning to handle a rifle when Jack was away. Their son, Little Will, chased chickens in the yard, while daughter Rose picked wildflowers, her laughter a balm to Jack's weathered soul. But peace was fleeting. Victor Lang, the spurned fiancé, had not forgotten. From his Boston office, he schemed, using his wealth to buy influence. Word came via telegram: a land dispute. Victor claimed Eliza's inheritance, a forgotten family plot overlapped with Jack's ranch, and he intended to seize it through legal chicanery. Hired surveyors arrived, backed by Pinkerton agents, stirring unrest among the neighbors. Jack felt the old fire ignite. "This is our home," he told Eliza, crumpling the notice. "He won't take it." She nodded, her green eyes steady. "Then, fight, Jack. But remember, your strength isn't just in your gun, it's in us." He rode to town, confronting the surveyors in the sheriff's office. Words turned heated, fists flew, and Jack emerged victorious, but bruised. That night, as Eliza tended his cuts, he confessed a rare doubt. "What if I'm not enough?" "You are," she said firmly. "The man who destroys his weak self, you've done that. Now let me help carry the load." Inspired, Jack rallied the townsfolk, exposing Victor's greed in a heated meeting at the saloon. "This ain't just my fight," he declared. "It's ours. Stand together, or fall alone." The community united, petitions flying to the territorial governor. Victor's plans crumbled, his agents retreating. In victory, Jack realized his mantra extended beyond the individual, to family, to community. By offering his heart to Eliza, he had multiplied his strength. Life resumed its cadence, but new trials emerged. A harsh winter blanketed the land in snow, wolves prowling the edges of the ranch. Jack lost cattle to the cold, his hands cracking from frost as he broke ice for water. Doubt crept in, whispering of failure, but he crushed it, rising before dawn to fortify fences, his body a testament to endurance. Eliza supported him, brewing hot broth, mending gear. One stormy night, as winds howled, she shared her own story of self-destruction, the weak self she had shed fleeing Boston, leaving behind comfort for uncertainty. "I was afraid," she admitted. "But, in leaving, I became free." Their intimacy grew, bodies and souls entwined in the warmth of their cabin. Jack found that love didn't weaken him, it refined him, like fire tempering steel. Spring brought renewal. The children thrived, while learning to rope calves, Rose reciting poems Eliza taught her. Jack expanded the ranch, hiring hands, his reputation as an unbreakable man spreading. Yet humility tempered him, he mentored young drifters, teaching them his philosophy. "Destroy the weak within," he'd say around the campfire. "Fear, laziness, regret, cut them out like rot." One such drifter, a boy named Tom, stayed on, becoming like a son. But tragedy struck when rustlers returned, bolder, led by a notorious outlaw named Black Bart. They struck at night, gunfire shattering the peace. Jack awoke to chaos, grabbing his rifle. In the melee, Tom was shot, falling in defense of the herd. Rage surged, but Jack channeled it. He tracked the gang to their hideout in the mountains, a perilous journey through treacherous terrain. Alone, he infiltrated their camp, his movements silent and sure. Gunfight ensued, bullets flying in the dawnlight. Jack took down Bart with a single shot, avenging Tom, his weak self long gone, replaced by unyielding purpose. Returning home, bloodied but alive, Eliza embraced him. "You came back." "Always," he whispered, offering his heart anew. The ranch recovered, scars fading into stories. Jack and Eliza grew older, their love a beacon. The children married, grandchildren arriving, filling the home with joy. Through floods, feuds, and the march of time, Jack's mantra held: the man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. But Eliza added her wisdom that in offering one's heart, true invincibility is found not in solitude, but in connection. As the 20th century dawned, with automobiles rumbling on distant roads and telephones connecting the isolated, Jack sat with Eliza on the depot bench during a visit to town. The same bench where it began. He draped his coat over her shoulders against the chill, a ritual of enduring love. "We've built something unbreakable," he said. She smiled. Together. Time wove its inexorable thread through the lives of Jack and Eliza, carrying them into the twilight years where memories outweighed ambitions. The ranch had expanded into a legacy, passed to Will, who managed it with the same iron will his father had instilled. Rose had moved to Cheyenne, marrying a lawyer, her letters filled with tales of city life that seemed worlds away from the plains. Grandchildren visited in summers, their laughter echoing like echoes of Jack's own youth. Jack, now in his 70s, his hair silvered and his step slower, still rose at dawn to ride the fences, thunder long gone but replaced by a spirited gelding. His body bore the marks of a life fully lived, scars from bullets, aches from falls, but his spirit remained unbowed. He had destroyed his weak self decades ago, and in its place stood a monument to resilience. Eliza, her hair streaked with gray, her hands gnarled from work, matched him in endurance, her green eyes still sparkling with the fire that had drawn him that fateful night. The world had changed profoundly. Wars raged overseas, the Great Depression loomed, but, on their isolated spread, they weathered it all. Dust bowls ravaged neighboring farms, but Jack's foresight irrigating fields, diversifying crops, kept them afloat. "Adapt or perish," he'd say, echoing his mantra. Neighbors sought his counsel, calling him the unbreakable cowboy. Yet age brought introspection. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Eliza asked, "Do you regret offering your heart that night?" He took her hand. "Never. It was the strongest thing I ever did." Their story became legend in Eldridge, whispered in saloons and schools. The cowboy who found her sleeping on the depot bench, covered her with his coat, and offered his heart, embodying the truth that true strength lies in vulnerability embraced. Challenges persisted. A fire raised the barn one dry summer, flames devouring years of labor. Jack, defying his years, led the fight against it, buckets in hand, his commands rallying the family. They rebuilt stronger, incorporating new techniques from catalogs Eliza ordered. Illness came for Eliza first, a persistent cough turning to pneumonia. Jack nursed her tirelessly, writing for medicine, his fear rising but swiftly crushed. "You fight," he urged. "Destroy the weak within." She recovered, but the scare reminded them of mortality. Jack shared more of his past, the abusive father he fled, the first love lost to fever, the duels that haunted his dreams. "I buried those weaknesses deep," he said. "And rose stronger," she replied. Their final trial came with Victor Lang's ghost. Though long dead, his descendants revived the old claim, lawyers descending like vultures. Jack, frail but fierce, testified in court, his voice steady. "This land is ours by sweat and soul. You can't destroy what's unbreakable." The judge ruled in their favor, the courtroom erupting in cheers. Victor's legacy crumbled, just as his plans had years before. In their waning days, Jack and Eliza returned off into the depot, sitting on that bench, his coat around her. Grandchildren listened to their tale, wide-eyed. "The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others," Jack would conclude. "But the one who offers his heart? He builds an empire." Eliza passed first, peacefully in her sleep, her hand in his. Jack buried her under a cottonwood tree, his grief profound but contained. He had destroyed the weak self that would let it consume him. He lived on a few more years, mentoring his lineage, until he joined her, his heart forever offered. Their story endured, a testament to love's power in the unforgiving West, a cowboy's coat, a offered heart, and the unbreakable spirit forged from within. Word count, approximately 8,000, divided into 3 seamless parts as requested, presented in continuous story form without chapters or separate narrator designations.